It's not because you have anxiety that you cannot have a peak performance. Both can exist at the same time. We accept that we have these emotions and we commit to the actions that connect us to our values. And then again, willingness is a big part of that. We need to be willing to experience the discomfort of that anxiety. I'm not going to tell you that everything is going to be happy, happy, joy, joy. No, that anxiety is part of the experience of being a performer who is growing, who is doing all these exciting, vulnerable things. All those things that have happened to you, and now you're putting yourself in this extremely vulnerable situation.
This is We Help Singers, a podcast about matching singers with teachers who actually fit how they learn. The voice teaching industry works on a myth that the best teachers can teach anyone. We're here to challenge that. You see, every teacher has a paradigm, a way of seeing, singing and learning that directs everything they do in the lesson room. Some teachers know their paradigm well, a lot don't, and singers pay the price in mismatched lessons. So we're having conversations with voice teachers about how they actually teach, not their marketing pitch, the real stuff. For episode 4, I'm talking with Sarah Algoet, a voice coach based in Spain who built her entire business around one question that we love here. Are we actually a good fit? She even created a multi-stage screening process that starts before she ever hears you sing. And she celebrates when people don't make it through because that means it works. Sarah describes herself as a guide, not a teacher. She facilitates rather than directs. She draws on nervous system regulation, acceptance and commitment training, and a deep understanding of hypermobility to meet singers where they actually are, not where a curriculum says they should be. We cover how burnout taught her to stop being everyone's teacher, what her intake system actually filters for, and why she thinks breathing exercises are the worst advice you can give a nervous performer. Let's go and see Sarah. Sarah, everyone, is here because she has an extensive history in voice teaching, and it is somewhat mind-blowing, the things that you squeeze into your life. And I'm very excited to speak to you about them all, especially your framework around teacher-student fit and your specific framework that you have on your website for when people want to at least attempt to garner some of your wonderful teaching history and tips and advice. And so I'd love to start there, if you don't mind. I'd love to start with, where did your fascination or your intrigue into the fact that you might not be the best teacher for everyone?
Where did that start? Well, experience, making huge mistakes, having horrible moments for myself and maybe also for those singers, then realizing like, ooh, we're not a good fit. And that's quite frustrating for me and for the student. And no judgment about me or the singer. It's just, if it's not a good fit, we should not continue. So I started in 2007. Yeah, I founded my business in 2007, and I started without a process, an SOP, it's called. And yeah, that was a huge lesson. Let's say it like that.
Sure. Was there anything on the build up to that, though, that really began to trigger you into your work in this area? Just speaking to you, online when we were back and forth on Facebook, is obvious that you are extremely passionate about this. Can you place your finger on anything that was making you understand that this is not working? Was it too many of the wrong lesson? Was it a certain type of wrong?
Well, it was to burnout and putting too high expectations on myself, because I really took the blame when I noticed that it wasn't working, because it's never the client's fault. So I took the blame. I felt very responsible for many things that I am not responsible for. I worked so many hours next to just the lesson hour to try to fix things, to be in service of people, but it still wasn't working. So yeah, I learned in those first years that it's impossible to be a match with every client. It's impossible to be a good voice teacher for every singer. And my business also needs to serve me. I am not in service of everybody and do not have to make myself fit with everybody. I am who I am. I have my philosophy, and that is a great match with many people, but with many people, it's not a great match. So I was responsible to prevent those horrible to prevent these horrible experiences to happen again for me and maybe for those singers too. I'm using the word for myself, but maybe they didn't think it was so horrible. But I noticed that I am not yeah, I'm not helping this singer as much as maybe somebody else could. So I decided that, I think already 3 years after I started. Yeah, in 2010, it was just a Word document
Hmm.
that I asked people to fill out. And throughout the years, that document became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I started offering discovery calls before having the first lesson. And I have to add that the last years, my SOP, my standard operation procedure, has been refined a lot because I have been a member of SECO. So Michelle Marquardt DeVoe, who founded SECO, has been very influential in my SOPs. So it has been refined even more. But it is something that I started doing before SECO, and I just love how it keeps on being refined.
Oh, lovely stuff. I'd love to get your take on. There's a marketing part of this as well, which is a slightly different way to look at things. However, I want to just go back to when you mentioned about your philosophy
Mhm.
and what is what is your philosophy when it comes to teaching? Let's
Okay, do
go.
you
Let's
have
get in
5
there,
hours?
please.
What is my philosophy? I prefer the word guide over teacher.
Mm.
I am in service of the artistic identity of the person I am working with. I love to use the word facilitate. I could use the word student-led, client-led, singer-led, however you want to call it.
Mhm.
However, there's also debates on that going on. Sometimes people need me not to be client-led, but need me to take a bit more responsibility
Mhm.
to push them a little bit more in a certain direction. But yeah, it depends from person to person. Sometimes I quickly have an idea how I might serve them best. Sometimes I need a lot of experimentation in order to figure it out. Sometimes they have a very clear idea what they want from me, and sometimes they have absolutely no idea. So then we just go through
Mhm.
playful experimentation and we figure it out. So I change how I work often according to the person I'm currently working with. So I cannot give you one answer to that question. I'm very sorry.
No, no, no. It's very hard. Very hard. It's such an array of grey areas, in
Yeah.
that the singers themselves, there's a spectrum of they know exactly what they want, or they think they know what they want, and then all the way through to I've got no idea. I need you to open some possibilities for me. Is there on that spectrum? Is there a place where you feel like you thrive more, or a certain student will thrive more with you, dependent on
Yes.
which side of the spectrum they are?
Yes. I'll use a word from acceptance and commitment training: willingness. That's such
Mm.
an important word. Learning to be comfortable with uncomfortable things, because chaos is where the magic happens. Chaos is where we learn. I'm so convinced of that. And I think if you're trying to become the best singer you can be, and with the best singer, I'm not talking about vocal technique. Best can mean many things. If you're trying to become that, it is often going to be difficult. There's going to be struggles, there's going to be chaos. And that's where we learn, that's where we grow. And people who are not willing to step into that chaos, I think it will be a less ideal fit then.
Mm, that's a great. So if there's singers listening to this now and they're thinking, I'm not sure how much chaos I like. How can you? Do you have a framework there? Is that something that's easy to articulate?
Well, for example, I rarely say, this is your problem. It starts with, I hate the word problem. And this is the solution, and this is what you have to do, and this is step 1, this is step 2, and then you do that. And when this happens, we're going to do that. No, that's not my way of working. I ask so many questions. Oftentimes, I have something in my head like, oh, I heard this. This might be an interesting pathway. However, when I start questions, oftentimes we end up on a totally different route. Most of the times, a better route than I would have taken without having asked those questions. And because of those questions, I end up challenging people a lot with, what if? So I ask them, for example, okay, so you told me that you felt this happening in your lower abdomen. What happens if you do it that way? Not because I think that would make their singing better. No, just because I want them to be open to other possibilities and to, interoception, to make that connection with their body. Because when I ask them, what if you do it like that, and then something happens? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, what happens if you do it like that? And then something else happens. Without any judgment, we are not saying, oh, that was great, that was beautiful, that was ugly. No, oh, that's interesting. Everything is data. Everything is interesting. There is no right or wrong. And for some people, that might feel chaotic. Like, okay, I'm not in control. I'm just allowing this to happen without any judgment. Okay, this sound leaves my mouth now. Okay, and oh, now I feel this in my body. What if I do it like that? Oh, now I feel some resistance. Okay, what if I lean into that? Resistance might mean it's an interesting thing to explore a little bit. I don't know whether I'm making myself clear. Maybe I'm chaotically explaining what the chaos I'm talking about is.
No, not at all. So yeah, there's a lot of self-reflection, I would say, and I noticed that with your intake forms itself. You know, that is what you are encouraging people to do, is to take a look at themselves and say, have you actually taken a moment to think about how you are perceiving this situation? Because we know there's so much power in that, right? And is that did I get that right? Is that where you really
Yes,
go with
yes,
the
yes, yes,
questioning?
100%. And this relates so beautifully to, ideal clients. A lot of people end up on my intake form. Not many people fill it out. So that's already a beautiful filter, because my website and the intake form screams at them what kind of teacher I am and what I ask from them to work with me. I ask quite a lot of accountability. They have to take responsibility for a lot of things. I'm not gonna hand it on a silver platter, because it's not my voice. It's not my story. And when I say voice, I'm not just talking about the physiological voice. I'm talking about the voice. So I just love how many people don't end up filling out the intake form, because when I was talking about these horrible experiences in earlier years, those were people who do not click well with that philosophy of accountability and responsibility. So with that intake form, they get filtered out. So they don't lose their time going through the discovery call or maybe booking a lesson with me and then figuring out like, oh, no, I want a different kind of voice lessons. They don't lose their time. I don't lose my time. Nobody loses energy. Nobody ends up being frustrated. So, yeah, loving that.
Yeah, yeah. And so would you say that with that said, your philosophy that feeds down to the choices you make, and actually the expectations for the singer are somewhat, this is more of a long-term journey for you, as opposed to teachers that may be able to, or may enjoy working in the more shorter term. Let's just say if someone right now was heading for an audition on Friday for a role on Broadway, and they're thinking, I need some quick. I need to get my voice into whatever it means to them to be in better this situation than it was right now. Is that someone where you might be saying, "I'm thankful that you didn't fill out my form," or
Oh,
is
no,
that
no,
someone who's
no.
also?
They're welcome. They're welcome because
Mm,
when somebody is doing that kind of audition, I think there's a lot of willingness.
mm,
So as long as they
mhm,
have willingness and accountability, they're very welcome in my studio. I love handing out quick fixes when it's necessary. For
mm.
example, when when a client has a big premiere and they're having issues and they want me to log in on Zoom an hour before going on stage and bam, 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 we need to solve it. I love it.
So, what does that lesson look like then? When you are, does it change at all from this more uh, explorative
Yeah.
pathway, or is it a bit? I mean, yeah. How does it differ with those guys?
Yeah. Yeah. What I do in situations like that is helping them remember that their system already knows and understands a lot and that their
Mhm.
system can deal with this issue. So obviously I'm not going to throw new things at them 1 hour before going on stage, but I
Sure.
do yeah. So if I have been working with them for a long time already, then I just know what worked for them and I just need to ask them the right question so they remember. Because when they find the answer or the solution themselves, the brain will latch on to it much better than if I just hand it on a silver platter. If it's a new person, well, then I have to say oftentimes I just have to do this and scream to myself, "Shut up, Sarah!" Not too much information. And then the beginning of the session is going to be me asking a lot of questions to detect and decode their language so I can adjust to their language. Because if I'm using it
Mm.
in the words or if I'm explaining it in the words that resonate with me, I might end up confusing them more. So I'm going to first try to detect and decode which words click with them, and then I'm going to try to adjust to that.
I'm really curious about how much we adapt as teachers in the lesson room. You know, what is the range in which we can and do
Oh,
adapt?
that, yeah.
And so if you have someone coming in, and really, one of the ways I guess we can dive into it is to talk about real examples.
Yeah.
You know, a student does this thing, and we think that isn't some okay. I see, I understand you're thinking this way. It isn't the way that I'd be thinking about it, but I can now adapt to move to where you are. What is
Mhm.
there any? Do you have any examples of that?
Um, I adapt a lot to the clients when I feel that this is what their nervous system needs right now. However,
Hmm.
I also have clients who have resistance about things that I know that it's going to be helpful if I push through that resistance. I'm going to give you a clear example. Recently, there was a client that I've been working with for 2 years, and she's a lovely avocational singer, lots of willingness, and we have a relationship in which we can be very blunt with each other. So we don't have to filter ourselves when you talk with each other. And she came to the lesson and she had worked on a new song for her, and some creaking came out. Creaking is like vocal fry, but with a fundamental frequency. Creaking is a term from a complete vocal technique.
Mhm.
So she had been singing a lot with that effect, and she was really enjoying it, and she wanted to demonstrate it to me, like, oh, I found this new thing, oh, this is great, I love it, I love it. However, I knew that she was also currently suffering from reflux, and that her voice was, yeah, affected by it. So there was irritation in the mucous membranes. I knew that when she came to the lesson, and she was like, oh, I found this new effect. And this might actually also been the reason why creaking reared its head.
Mm.
And I asked her whether she could take it off. And she had some resistance against that. Well, I found this great thing and it really suits the story. Why do I have to do this? And if this would be a new client, and if I wouldn't know yet how her system reacts to it, and what she needs, it might have been that I would have listened to her and, okay, you can do it a bit longer. But now I was like, no, I'm going to take the lead. You have to prove to me that you can take it off. So it is efficient, and it's not because you are mixing two techniques together that should not be mixed together. And despite that resistance, she did it, but I could really notice like she was not happy with it. She was really grumpy, but she did it. And in the end of the lesson, she actually thanked me, because through that experimentation, like, okay, can I take it off? She had discovered so many interesting things about her voice. And afterwards, it's okay to add it again when she has demonstrated, like, okay, I can sing this song in a clean way without the effect. So I've proven my voice, or I've shown my voice. Okay, this is the clean way, the clear way, clean way, however you want to call it, of singing. And now I can
Mhm.
put this effect on top of it. And she was actually much, much, much more in control of that. So adaptability, yeah, but then I had to take the lead, because she told me at the end of the lesson, well, yeah, indeed. Now I realize, when you asked me, like, is it comfortable when you apply this creaking? I told you in the beginning of the lesson, yes, it's comfortable. I now realize, now that I feel everything, when everything is more functional, no, it wasn't comfortable. This is comfortable singing. So that's a moment where I had to take the lead and not adapt to what she would have preferred. So
Mhm.
I'm in service of her long-term goals, and one of her long-term goals, of course, is sustainability. I'm not in service of, oh, let's have some fun a little bit, when I know that this might be hurting her voice.
Mhm. And is that the same? Might be a silly question, but is that the same for most students for you? That long term. You mentioned efficiency, and these terms can be obvious to us, I suppose, but to get to the root of it, you mentioned, yeah, efficiency and sustainability. Are they pillars that you would stand by? Is it, say, if a singer came to you, is that what they, to some degree, are expecting to receive from you? Is that reassurance that they are going to be efficient, or they are going to be sustainable, or again, is that student specific?
I think most of my clients have that as a top priority, that it's sustainable. However, sustainability and efficiency are not always the same thing,
Hmm.
because sometimes, if you look at it from a voice science point of view, a sound might not be the most efficient way to be vocalizing. However, it's a nice way of doing it. It's serving our storytelling, and there are more efficient ways to produce a sound. However, those ways are not serving our story. So if you do that with enough awareness of the fact that this is not 100% the most efficient way of creating a sound, so I don't do it for 5 hours in a row and I do my cool down after it, and I'm not doing it for a show of 3 hours, but I sprinkle it in sometimes. So if you have that awareness, then that can be sustainable if you don't take it too
Hmm.
far. So for me, efficiency and sustainability are not 100% the same.
Hmm. because they're just using different, again, I guess specific to each individual. Where do you can you is there any way that you can put words to where you draw the line? When is it acceptable to to um to not be efficient? If we're saying that, the main goal would be then to be sustainable, when is it okay to not, and how long can I take a lack of efficiency
Well, I would
versus
not
the storytelling? Mm,
sorry, I would not say not efficient or lack of efficiency. I would say a bit less efficient. There's
right.
like you have black and white, and then you have all these beautiful shades of gray. If this is
Mm,
100% efficient and this is 0% efficient, I think we can play in this gray zone. For example, when I'm working with the extreme vocal effects, yeah, you could be
mm,
singing
mm.
in a way that we might call, yeah, you can be singing more efficiently without engaging the ventricular folds too. You know, when you engage the
Sure.
ventricular folds, making that sound is less efficient than just allowing them to back off and only have the vocal folds vibrate. Does that give you an example of what I mean with efficiency?
Absolutely, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a very these are all this is what I love about this conversation, and the way that you think about things is obviously very it can be very abstract, especially when we're
Yeah.
talking about examples that may or may not have happened. But I guess, as we spoke about before, my quest with all of this is to, well, number one is to paint the true picture of you as a teacher for the world to see, so that they know, okay, uh, if is Sarah right for me? I can make that decision or not.
Uh-huh.
And also, because I think that if we can put, language to these nuances in the classroom, in the lesson room, I just think that universally it can help us. It can help singers, and it can help uh, us as teachers dial into what we do best, and therefore how we can help students more. But that's just my opinion on it. I mean, what based on your work about fit, what yeah, what do you think about that at all? If most teachers are saying, I adapt to this environment, this situation, this scenario, is there a possibility that we could be an industry where we are sort of adequate for many and not excellent for some?
Oh. I'm going to give you a clear example. I have been a guest professor at the Conservatory of
Hmm.
Brussels for the musical theatre department. And there I had to prepare the singers for the world they were going to enter. So I noticed when I was teaching in that environment, and I know for many of my colleagues, that was like, what? Number one, that's so great to have that on your resume. You're a guest professor at the conservatory. Wow, you want to stay there for the rest of your life. However, I had to guide singers in a direction that I could feel was not their true identity. Like in the way I am working, I'm really digging deep to try to figure out and to help the singers figure out what they want, what their story is, what their voice is. And now I'm not talking about just a physiological voice, what their
Hmm.
voice is. Yeah. There's a reason why the baseline of my business is because your voice deserves to be heard. And there I
Hmm.
noticed that many parts of their voices had to be silenced for them to pass their exam and be, yeah, a marketable product for the musical theater business.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
really clashed with my philosophy. I had to put them in boxes and I had to tell them, okay, this song you have to sing in that way because musical directors are going to expect you to make that nuance there and you have to make that. And I just felt when I was working with them that nah, that's not
Hmm.
their true pathway. They need to have the freedom to go through playful experimentation, to explore in different directions. So adaptability, I decided not to adapt to that world, to what was expected from me, how I had to teach them. So no, I just resigned. I quit that, and many
Mhm.
colleagues were like, "You're crazy!" No, I didn't want to work in that context. So as a teacher, I do not want to adapt in that way. And I also think it's a really bad idea to adapt in a way that I would end up not being passionate about teaching this person anymore. For example, in my intake forum, I asked them which subjects they're interested in. And one of the subjects I entered there is music theory, singing in harmony, so more the theoretical theoretical side of things. And I am not an expert in that. I can give them some basic knowledge, but I'm
Mhm.
not an expert. There are people who are trained to work with people like that. And in the past, I worked with those people, and actually they learned a lot and they were happy with it, but I was not happy. When I saw them in my agenda, I have to work on music theory again. So in that way, I do not adapt. I do not work with children. That's not my expertise. And I have been teaching children in the past. I have been adapting to that, and that did not make me happy. So in that way, I do not adapt. So adaptability can mean many things. It's a very
Mhm.
philosophical question, I think.
Oh, yeah, it really is, yeah, and I love it. That's a wonderful answer. You really did pinpoint some areas there. How would you define, if you've got a platform for the world, which you currently have, what would you what would you how would you define your expertise?
I think my expertise is helping people discover that there are so many more possibilities than they think, and that
Mm,
there's not just one correct way of singing, correct, or just one healthy way of singing, to really help them discover that we don't have just one identity. We have many parts. And today I want to give a voice to this part of me. But tomorrow I want to give a voice to that part of me. And they sound so different. So they need totally different techniques. They need totally different approaches. They need totally different sounds. And I love to guide people through all these beautiful possibilities, again, through playful exploration. And I do not get to decide what is right or wrong or good or ugly or healthy or whatever. I just guide them through all these possibilities so they can discover what is out there, and they can decide today, this is my voice, but tomorrow, this is my voice. If somebody comes to me with memory from cats, and they want to make a heavy metal version of it with grunt and distortion and rattle and growl, and I think that's absolutely atrocious, that's my problem. My job is to teach them how to do this in a sustainable way, and my job is to help them voice their story like they want to do it. So
mhm,
they are allowed to ask for my artistic opinion. I will give it. But it's nothing more than that, an opinion. So, talking again about ideal fit, people who want me to tell them, you're gonna sing this song, and this is the way you're gonna sing it, and this is good, and this is bad. People who need a teacher like that, I'm not their teacher. And I know that there are many singers who are looking for a teacher like that. They really want a person to take them by the hand and
mm.
just serve them everything on a platter. This is how you do it. This is good and this is bad. And they love that, but I am not that kind of teacher.
Fantastic. Yeah, that really does come through in everything that you write, your website, and everything you're saying now. It always seems to me you're pressing for the student to think past some of the constraints that they unknowingly might be adopting in
Yes.
their psychology.
Oh
Would
yes.
that
Oh, that makes me think of so many times when people are new clients and I ask them, okay, what song did you bring today? Well, can I sing this song? And I'm like, yeah, of course you can sing this song. You chose it, so let's work on it. I'm allowed to I'm allowed to choose my own songs. People are so like, what? You're not going to tell me? Okay, what are we going to do today? And then I'm like, I don't know. Let's do a check-in. Let's see what presents itself. Oh, so you don't have a lesson preparation. You haven't decided on beforehand what you're going to teach me today. And then I'm like, how could I know what we're going to work on if I haven't heard you sing, if I haven't heard your story about everything that has presented itself since last lesson, your thoughts, your questions, how you practice? How am I supposed to know? Or how am I supposed to decide what we're going to work on? Let's do a check-in. Just sing a little bit and let's see how your body, your voice, your mind present today. And then let's just see, okay, this is presenting itself today. And this was one of your goals. Do they match? Like, are you ready with this check-in? Does this check-in tell you you're ready to work on this goal? Or do you need something else to bridge that gap? And that might be a technical exercise, that might be a storytelling exercise, that might be a nervous system regulation, that might be a conversation with me. It might be so many things. So when people enter the studio, we don't start warming up. That's not how I work.
Can you talk more into that's awesome. What does that look like then when let's say I've just walked into your
Mhm.
room? What happens? What
Sorry.
happens next?
What happens next? You walk into my room. Is this your first ever lesson, or are we already working for a time, a
Let's
while?
go with the first ever.
First ever lesson. Okay, so what
Mhm.
you've seen on my website was the form that they fill out before they get to speak to me. So they
Mhm.
fill out a form, then we have a discovery call. This is the first time we speak. We go through that questionnaire. And at the end of that discovery call, we decide whether we both think it's a match. And it might be that at the end of that discovery call, I'm going to tell you, I think I might serve you better if I refer you on to a colleague. So it's not just the singer that has to decide that, okay, I have a feeling that Sarah is offering what I'm looking for. I also have to feel like this is going to be a match. So most of the times we decide at the end of that discovery call, if it's a match, to book the first lesson. I send you another questionnaire.
Leave me alone. Come on.
Yeah, no, I need a lot of medical information, for example, for some people. So there's a questionnaire, things I need to know that I don't figure that out like in lesson 10, things that can inhibit breathing, free posture, voice issues, whatever. So that's really important. But also I ask them questions like, what do you think is your strength as a singer? It's actually the first question on that questionnaire.
Mhm.
Many struggle with that. But that ensures beautiful, interesting conversations at the beginning of that first lesson. Because many people are not capable of saying, I think this is one of my strengths. So then I know that one of the first things I have to do in that first lesson is help them realize all their strengths. Because everybody has strengths. There's always something and more than one thing. And I think it's so important that we help people celebrate what they already can do and not just focus on what they think they cannot do yet and what they have to learn, and without that they're a bad singer. No. So this is why this is the first question on that questionnaire. I also ask them about which singers, actors, presenters, people inspire them. And that's also very useful information for me. I ask them about their goals, their short-term goals, their long-term goals, but I also ask them about how have they been working in the past? What were their past goals? How have they worked on those? Are they happy with their progress? If not, why? Do they think that they should have done something differently? So all these questions lead to tremendously interesting conversations at the beginning of that first lesson. I think you already understand that the first lesson is 2 hours and not 1 hour. The first lesson is
Sure.
always 2 hours because we want to have this conversation, but
Wow.
also a first lesson. So first we discuss that questionnaire. And then the second part of that lesson is they demonstrate something that they think is within their comfort zone. So they do not start with, look, I'm shit at this. And
Sure.
it's nicer to start with something that they feel comfortable with. And again, for many people, this is a difficult question. Oh, I have to show something or I have to sing something in which I can say, oh, my voice is serving this song, and this song is serving my voice. So that's really interesting. I have to say, many times when people sing that comfort zone song, I already have many things listed like, oh, this would be interesting to explore. And then the second thing they demonstrate is something that they believe is a challenge for them. And then we get to work. And that first lesson is so different every time. I do not have an SOP for that first lesson when it comes to I first start with breath work or I first start with resonance. No, 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 no. I do ask them, as I do with every lesson, to sing the song or the part of the song with a what I call check-in state of mind. I ask them to go through the song and welcome everything that presents themselves in their body, in their voice, and in their mind. So after they have sung that first song or part of a song, I ask them, okay, what has presented itself in your body? And I ask them to not use subjective words. So, not that felt good or that sounded bad or that was better. No, they have to give me objective information. I felt that my knees were locked. There's no judgment there. Or I could hear an irregular vibrato. That's not good or bad because maybe in experimental classical singing, you sometimes want an irregular vibrato. So, no judgment whatsoever. I noticed in the verse, I was really connecting to the story. And in the chorus, well, I was thinking about the laundry that I have to do tonight. So I just want to know what is presenting itself in body, in voice, and in mind. And then we check, does that correspond? Or does that tell you that you're ready to work on your goal, yes or no? And then we decide what could be a nice preparation. I don't like the word warm up. So I do not start with warm up. That's with every lesson, not just the first lesson. I start every lesson with a check-in, and then we might go through some technical exercises, but oftentimes that's not necessary. And then we start to work on the song, and then it appears to be the fact that, oh, they do need a technical exercise. Okay, let's create a technical exercise with a sentence from that song. I hate arpeggios. I hate scales.
Oh no.
I do not think it's efficient for the learning process. I take a sentence or I take a part of a sentence or a jump or whatever from the song so their nervous system can connect to making music, so their nervous system can connect to a story.
How do you join the dots between? Because from memory, you said you don't feel that scales help the nervous system, and but singing from the song does, and then
Yeah.
I would say intimated towards the fact it was to do with the connection with telling the story.
I think it has to do with performance. When we go through scales or arpeggios, I have a feeling there is much more tendency to, it has to be right. I have to
Oh.
nail this note. And that's a totally different mindset and has an effect on your nervous system. When we connect to the story, when we connect to the music, we set in motion so many processes in our body that we do not understand yet what those processes are, but we know that they help the voice. The connective tissues are so important. They connect everything. Well, yeah, their name is connective tissues. I cannot imagine Since learning about the connective tissues, I cannot imagine anymore teaching without thinking about the connective tissues. I
Mm.
learned amazing exercises, for example, from Sanne Graulund. She's an amazing voice teacher, and she's the first one who taught me exercises to work with the nervous system, and they are so efficient, and they help people to, in a very deep way, set in motion these processes that help people sing in an embodied way, like with the whole body and not just this. And when I say the whole body,
Hmm.
I'm also talking about the emotions that are being transported through our body via the connective tissues. So I integrate a lot of nervous system regulation exercises. Oftentimes after a check-in, I will suggest a nervous system regulation exercise, and it's amazing to notice how so many issues, I would never use that word in a lesson, but you know what I mean.
Mhm.
How many elements that have presented themselves become much
Ah,
more efficient.
does everyone have an imbalance with their connective tissue if the singing isn't going well? The singing is really bad. No, I know we don't use those words, but no, if the singing isn't going quite as we would like,
Yeah.
is it? Would you? Is that your north star? Would you somewhere, and
No.
you're choosing the tools to use dependent on the student, but something in your mind is going, this is all going all the way back to that nervous system and the connective tissue, and if so, how do you know?
Okay. So I interrupted you a little bit while you were still asking the question. I was like, no. With that, I meant it's not that I have a standard operation procedure, like I always start with that.
Hmm.
No. And oftentimes when something isn't as efficient as we would want it to be, I start with asking questions because
Hmm.
my brain might go, this is the problem, this is the solution. But then I just shut that part up, like I already said. And then I just ask a question. And oftentimes the reply to that question brings us to a path that's much more efficient. Sometimes I will just offer an experimentation, like, okay, this has presented itself and let's experiment with that. And that might be experimentation with vowels. So it might be very much directed towards vocal technique, like, okay, which volume do you want to create? Which vowel are you singing? Do you know the rules? Like, which vowel facilitates that volume, or which character do you want the sound to have? Do you want it to be authoritative? Do you want it to be intimate? Okay, this vowel connects better. Oftentimes it will be like that. But when I notice, for example, that there's something happening in the breathing, oftentimes not focusing on the breathing, but focusing on nervous system regulation and work with the connective tissues can help the breathing to figure itself out. For example, when somebody has performance anxiety and their breathing gets higher, I think the worst advice we can give them is do breathing exercises. Because
Hmm.
then we're like, okay, I'm breathing high. I have to breathe low. Okay, put my hand on my lower abdomen. Okay, it's not working. Oh my god, I'm breathing high. My heart is really. Oh my god, this is going to be. No, do not focus on the thing that is working badly at that time, but try to start from the beginning. And probably their nervous system can use some regulation, and the result of that will be that their breathing will figure itself out. I don't know whether that
Hmm.
resonates.
Yeah. Well, how would I regulate my nervous system? That's so cool.
Oh, okay. Well, I can give you an exercise. I would have to lay down on the floor for that. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's
Okay,
get into
great.
it.
Disclaimer for people who are going to do this exercise. This exercise might have a deep effect. Some things might release, and you are responsible to create safety. You are responsible for respecting your own boundaries. So if you feel that something becomes overwhelming, stop the exercise, come out of the exercise. So do not push, don't go too far. When we talk about nervous system regulation, titrating is really important. So we give it a little bit, and then we come back. And then a little bit more, and then we come back. So taking the time and allowing your system to grow into this and to go deeper and deeper in steps and not all at once take a deep dive is so essential. Because if you feel overwhelmed, if you go too fast and if you try to force things, you will end up more dysregulated. And that's not what we want. I'm going to put this semi-deflated Pilates ball between my sternum and the floor. And I am going to make sure that my shoulders are not just falling to the sides, but they can also fall in that direction. So it might be that I have to shift the ball for that. It might be that I have to inflate it a bit more, deflate it a little bit. So you have to experiment in what way this ball serves you the best. You can also take a towel or a stuffed animal, but the squishy feeling of this Pilates ball is the best. I prefer it. So let's go. The front of my head needs to be comfortable. I have a fluffy carpet. If you don't have a fluffy carpet, just put something here so your forehead doesn't hurt. My sternum is on the ball, and I'm trying to find the position where my shoulders are not just falling to the sides, but also a bit forward. Like if the ball is too high, my shoulders will not fall forward. So the ball needs to be a bit lower, and then my shoulders will fall to the floor too. And my hands, my palms are towards the ceiling. And now the thing is, I imagine that I am hot chocolate. If you do this exercise, you stay here for a few minutes. It might be that you want to stay there for half an hour. And the only
Sure.
thing you do is you imagine that you're hot chocolate and you just allow everything that presents itself. When you're done, you roll to the side, go to fetal position, and you keep the ball against your sternum. So don't do what I just did. Don't get up like that. No. You roll to the side and you keep the ball here and you take your time to come out of it. You stay here, you keep the ball there, and then you take your time to get up. Make sure that you don't have a blood pressure drop. So really take your time to get up.
So just to say to people listening there and not watching, we were face down. There was a soft Pilates ball that, wasn't all the way inflated. Soft on the sternum. So face down, ball between the sternum and the floor. And you're essentially, am I right in thinking that when you say thinking about being hot chocolate, we're looking at that there's a reason, the reason there is to allow ourselves to soften into the ball. Is that the idea there?
Well, sometimes that will happen. And sometimes people will feel like, ooh, there's like a sting here. And when you're okay with that, just allow that to happen. Notice the sting. If it becomes painful, if it becomes overwhelming, come out of the exercise, like I showed, first rolling to the side and then going to fetal position. Oftentimes, when you just notice, oh, there's a little sting there, I'm hot chocolate. And sometimes people notice, oh, my breathing is changing. Okay, allow it to change. So you don't change anything yourself. You do not decide, oh, this is happening with my breathing, I'm going to change it. Oh, this is happening with that, I am going to change it. No, you just listen to your body and you notice everything. It's quite a mindful exercise. And you come out whenever you feel ready to come out. So this is part one. It's a pity that you didn't do it, because part two is actually when we're, again, both sitting on the chair. Imagine that you have just done this exercise, and I'm going to ask you, can you keep the ball against your sternum? And just talk to me. What has presented itself? What has happened? And I have yet to encounter a person who did not say something in the range of, oh, I felt comforted, or I felt safety. Something in that range, because we're working on a very important layer of fascia here that is connected to safety. When we feel threatened, and we have to admit, nowadays we all constantly feel a level of threat, So when we feel threatened, this part of our body, our rib cage, the shoulders, they want to protect us by closing. And when you put this squishy pressure with this Pilates ball, it's like telling your system it's okay, it's safe, you're being taken care of. And it's amazing to notice how differently people will start to breathe. Then I ask them to sing with the ball here. What happens with these voices is wow, because they're breathing, because they're allowing things to flow, and that level of threat, I'm not saying that it's disappeared, but it's much lower. And when the system feels safe or safer than before, the voice presents itself. The voice dares to present itself without being forced, without being pushed, without being controlled in a way that we create fake stability and not real stability. And oftentimes then when I ask people like, okay, can you take the ball away? People are like, oh, I want to keep the ball here. So
Right.
the practice then is to do this so much that in the end you do not need to lay down on the floor anymore. It's enough to just take the ball here. I have many clients who have the ball here until the last second they go on stage. There's currently a record on the radio playing that I know that has been recorded in the studio with the singer holding that ball here constantly. Yeah, and then
No
the second
way.
step is you don't do it with the ball, but the hand is enough. And during a concert, you can do that. You can, while you're singing, it really fits the storytelling. You put the hand here, and then the system remembers, oh, yeah, this sensation of safety. And then the final step is we imagine it there without it being there, but the system remembers that it's there. And what happens to that breathing is amazing and so much more efficient than me asking them to put your hand on your lower belly, make sure that the lower belly does this, put your hand on your ribs. Sometimes I do work with that, but not in these cases. Not when I notice what is happening now is a dysregulated system. And oftentimes that's the thing.
I can. It makes me sleepy just thinking about it. Does what are the triggers for you in that can you define those when you know that this is what the singer needs?
I have to call that intuition. I'm
Sure.
HSP, highly sensitive person, and that is a blessing and a curse. Do you know what that is?
Yes, vaguely, but it'd be great for you to explain it.
Yeah. So when you're HSP, your brain receives a lot of information and picks it up too, because everybody's brains receives that information, but people who are not HSP, their brain will decide this is important, this is not important, and will filter out awareness for many things. So an HSP brain will be aware of everything that enters. So that's a curse. But the blessing part is that people send out so many signals without realizing it, and I pick up a lot. Oftentimes, when a person enters the room, I can sense things. That's very helpful as a teacher. In my beginning years, I was very open for everything, also the unhelpful things. So I learned to filter out a little bit to protect myself from that. And that's why I will never have 8-hour teaching days ever again, because that filtering is also very tiring, let's say it like that. But it is a blessing when I manage to schedule my days in a way that I have just enough clients. And when they are ideal clients, then it's a beautiful exchange. It goes back and forth, and I end up being more energized after the lesson. And in the past, I was depleted when I was not working only with ideal clients, but also with people that were not that great a fit.
Is it tricky to be able to give a sort of criteria for this is when you would use it? This is when it's a good tool for you to use for a singer or a teacher. the Pilates ball and the process you just went through.
Yeah, so you're asking me when I would say to another teacher, this is a good moment to use it.
Yeah, if they don't have your superpowers of being
There
highly
are other
sensitive.
people with intuition. I
Right.
have a feeling that actually many voice teachers have that intuition. We are a
Right.
special kind of people, I think. I don't think I'm unique in that. And I think it's really important we need to learn to trust that intuition. I'm pretty sure that many people who are listening to this podcast can already think of a client or think of a lesson like, oh yeah, that would be really interesting to use on this person. When you notice that they're hypervigilant, when you notice that their body doesn't facilitate an efficient breath, when you notice that they're very talkative, for example, when you notice that there's a lot of unwanted tension in certain parts of their body, because tension is not necessarily a bad thing. We need a lot
Mm.
of tension when it's efficient.
Sure.
So
To
that's another
stand up
discussion.
for a start, let's.
Our muscles need to be active. That's tension.
Sure.
Many signs that might tell you that this might be a good thing. However, the parasympathetic is not the only state we need when we're singing. The
Mm.
sympathetic is not necessarily a bad thing. When we're excited about a performance, when we want to be high energy, we need both. However, they
Mm.
need to be balanced, and the equilibrium between the two of them needs to serve our purpose. Like if you're going to do a high energy concert, I suggest not doing the hot chocolate exercise 2 seconds before going on stage. Maybe you start your preparation with it, but then maybe you go through some more energizing things. Oh, it has happened so many times when I started a lesson and I noticed something in a person's body, like, okay, can you just go run up and down the stairs 3 times and then come back? Okay, the juices are flowing. Now we can work. So it's not just about calming down, if we can use that word, because telling some person calm down is not the best thing to do. But sometimes we need to get the system more energized. It's about a balance.
Mm. Very tricky, yeah, like you say, when especially the nerves before going on stage. When oftentimes the guidance would be, yeah, take the breaths, have some box breaths or some extended out breaths, because it sort of calm things down. But in that scenario, sometimes it isn't the most helpful approach, is it?
I'm not
And
a
so,
fan of that. I would not do. I actually, in my experience, guiding them to awareness of breath is more often detrimental than helpful. I would
really,
use in such a moment techniques from acceptance and commitment training. Um, I don't know whether you know that ACT
yeah,
in short.
can you go into that? Yes, explain that if you
Oh,
can. That's really cool.
that's another soapbox moment. I got this from Dr. Dave Honkos, who trained me in ACT and also in CFT, compassion focused training. Um, Acceptance and commitment training comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. And acceptance and commitment training is designed specifically for performance anxiety. So the therapy kind is designed to work with general anxiety, all kinds of anxiety, and it's part of the fourth wave of behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is part of the third wave, ACT, the fourth wave. And there are many amazing things in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that are great. However, there's one aspect that never truly resonated with me, and that's the fact that when you have negative thoughts, for example, I'm going to miss that note, my voice is going to break, or if you're like, I'm a horrible singer, what am I doing here? 5 seconds before you go on stage. Like in CBT, you would try to push those thoughts away by putting a positive counter thought. So you would have some kind of judgment against the negative thought. That never sat well with me. Judgment, Never a good thing, is never going to help our nervous system. What we do in ACT is we accept that we have that thought. And then I would integrate parts language. I would take it a step further. Like, I'm not saying I accept that I have this thought. No, it's about I notice that a part of me is having that thought. For example, I notice that this part of me thinks I'm a horrible singer. When you try to push that away because like, ooh, can't have that, will not be helpful. It's like you're trying to push a ball underwater. That's what CBT does. Push a ball underwater. It might help, it might work. However, you have to keep on pushing. You have to put in the work to push that negative thought away. And there will be a moment where the ball slips out of your hands and explodes in your face again with much more force. So instead of trying to push away that negative thought, we're going to accept that it's there and show compassion for why it's there. We all have our vulnerabilities. Biological vulnerabilities, for example, I have PCOS, which makes me prone to anxiety. And then we have the psychological vulnerabilities. Did we have safe attachment with our parents, yes or no? And then we have things that have happened in our lives. For example, a violinist who was the sole receiver of a very big grant to go study at the very prestigious conservatory. One might think that's a very positive thing. However, this violinist ended up, because of her biological and psychological vulnerabilities, she ended up having the anxious conviction, I am not allowed to make a mistake when I have an exam. Because when I make a mistake, it means I'm a horrible violinist and I've taken the grant away from somebody who deserves it much more than me. So what do we do with this anxious conviction? We accept that it's there and show compassion. We say, no wonder that I have this anxious conviction when I'm looking at all the things that have happened to me and when I'm looking at all my vulnerabilities. That's part one. When you manage to do that, you can, for example, say, oh, thank you, anxious conviction, for warning me about this. How do you call that in English? How to put your fingers? Like
On it.
the fingering. You call it like that. How to put your fingers
Yeah,
on the violin?
yeah, we'll take
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, that part of me, for warning me about that. However, I am not going to allow you to guide my actions. I'm not going to allow you to decide for me what I'm going to do. No, no, no. I'm going to make decisions. I am going to take actions based on my values. Values like connection, authenticity. For example, if a value is connection, that violinist can say, thank you, part, for warning me about that. However, you're not task relevant. What is task relevant? I am going to look the judges in the eye because I want to connect with them while I'm playing. Because if she would listen to that anxious conviction, I cannot make a mistake, oh, otherwise it means I'm a horrible violinist, she would be playing like this, for example. So we make value-based decisions, not emotion-based decisions. This is a long story.
No,
I
please.
hope Dr. Dave Hungos doesn't kill me when he listens to this, so I hope I explained it well now.
Sure.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing to explain in a very short period of time.
Right, no, I get it. No, it sounds like it. There's a body of work there. Is there so mentioned the values. Is that something that needs to be configured before,
Yes.
perhaps in your intake form or
No, not in the intake form. It is a conversation. So I have a gazillion questions. For example, how do you want to be known as a musician? Or first we identify, do you want to talk about you as a singer, as a songwriter, as a performer, as an artist? So we decide, okay, now we're going to talk about your values as a singer. Okay, how do you want to be known as a singer? Or if you would have to give up being a singer, would you miss it? And if so, why? What are the important things that you miss about being a singer? Or when you're performing at your best, what is it that you're typically doing? So all these questions, oftentimes this conversation takes an hour. And then through their answers, we detect and decode their values: authenticity, connection, storytelling, health, for example, is often also an important value. And then we decide which committed actions can I take to be in touch with my values. Those emotions, they're allowed to be there. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to experience anxiety. It's not because this part of me is having these emotions that I will have a horrible performance. No, they can exist at the same time. Jacques Brel, I'm Belgian, was known for vomiting before every performance. He had horrible performance anxiety. It's not because you have anxiety that you cannot have a peak performance. Both can exist at the same time. We accept that we have that we have these emotions, and we commit to the actions that connect us to our values. And then again, willingness is a big part of that. We need to be willing to experience the discomfort of that anxiety. Because if you try to push away that anxiety, it means that you're not willing to feel the anxiety. I'm not going to tell you that everything is going to be happy, happy, joy, joy. No, that anxiety is part of the experience of being a performer who is growing, who is doing all these exciting, vulnerable things. Anxiety is a part of that, and you have a really good reason to have that anxiety. All those things that have happened to you, and now you're putting yourself in this extremely vulnerable situation. Please have some compassion for that. And then make contact with the parts of you that can make a committed action connected to your values.
Oh, that was the delivery of the year. Fantastic. Yeah. No, it makes so much sense. Yeah. This again, this self-reflection is clearly a huge part of what you do in it, and it makes so much sense as to why it works. I was thinking then, because there is a lot of thought into this, and clearly, as we said, there may be some humans that don't their method of thinking doesn't quite align with the way that you work, and that's fine, and we've spoken about that, and we hopefully can get there quick to understand that that's the case and we need to work with somebody else. But is there let's just say a tangible example of someone who is singing a song and it's the note that they're singing the song and their goal is to perform this song, and every time they go to this one note in the song, they're 4 notes below it.
In a lesson, when a singer is constantly below a certain pitch, I will never start with pointing out you were low, because then they will think, oh, I have to pull it higher, for example. I will just start, no, obviously first to check in, and that will give me a lot of information, whether they're aware of it yet or not. And when I notice that they're not aware yet, and that the questions that I ask get us into a direction that would also address that note constantly being below pitch. Oftentimes, because we recalibrate the system, we make something more efficient, the pitch will be solved automatically. Because oftentimes when we're below pitch, it's not a matter of hearing or musicality. It's about the system not being capable yet of producing the note that they actually can hear in their brain. So I think it's really unhelpful to, as a first step, say to somebody that was sharp or that was low. Because that will not help. That's not the solution, to think it has to be higher. We need to detect and decode, why is it low? Maybe the breath management was not 100% in balance. Maybe their knees were locked. Maybe their back was too hollow. Maybe they were choosing a vowel that was not very efficient for that particular sound. Maybe their jaw was tense. There's a gazillion reasons why that note was flat. And telling them it's flat is not helpful. No, no, we
Mhm.
detect and decode why. And then afterwards, I will tell them, do you notice something that's different? Sometimes they will say, oh, yeah, now I noticed this notice. Yeah. Was I flat before, for example? And sometimes they don't realize. And then I tell them, listen back to the recording. You're going to notice that now that this is more balanced, that your pitching is so much better now. So I
Mhm.
train the singers I work with when they notice when they're flat or sharp to immediately try to detect and decode why was it flat or sharp, and not just think, oh, it's flat, I need to pull it up. Nuh-uh. Why was it? Because it's a result, it's an outcome of something that you've been doing. It's not the starting point.
I like that. You come back to it afterwards to, again, help them understand. As you said, you don't want them to be continuing on thinking that they are, Beyonce Knowles, and they've
No, no, no. Oh, no, that serves nobody. I do not lie. I do not sugarcoat.
sure,
That serves
sure.
nobody. I need to be honest. However, it's so much better if I facilitate them discovering these things by themselves by asking questions than me just pointing out a gazillion things. When
Mhm.
they figure it out themselves, their brain will much better uh, lock in.
Find its way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so,
They will remember it like that because without awareness, no learning. So I think one of my most important tasks as a voice teacher is bring awareness, not by telling this is happening, you have to do this is wrong, this is right. No, by asking questions. So their system starts to become aware and starts to become much more sensitive to signs like the tissues of our airway, of our vocal tract, are very smart. The tissues are often giving us messages. And so many singers do not listen to the tissues. The tissues are wise. When we notice that the constrictor muscles are overly active, when we notice that when we make a certain sound that it's irritating the mucous membranes, please listen to it. I've had so many times that I had to teach a person that what they were feeling was uncomfortable. Because there's a huge difference between this is known and this is comfortable. If they have been singing in a certain way that is trained, and that's just how they have been singing for 10, 20 years, and then when I ask them, is this comfortable? But they don't know that a different sensation exists. Obviously, they're going to say, yes, this is comfortable. And when I hear a sound that I think, I don't think this sounds comfortable, then I'm not going to tell them, well, this is not comfortable. No, I'm going to take them through playful experimentation. Okay, what if you do it like this? Huh. And like that, what happens then? And most of the time, their system then learns, oh, but that's different. They first start with words like that. That's different. That's strange. Words like that. And oftentimes, different and strange are a good thing. And then at the end, they realize, oh, so this is comfortable. And what I've been feeling before, that's not comfortable. And that's so much more efficient than me telling them, okay, here's this exercise, and you have you have to do this every day for at least 15 minutes, and this is the right way of singing, and this is good, and this is. No, that doesn't work. I have to facilitate awareness to enter the room. Without awareness, no learning. And the good thing of that is that they will become capable of helping themselves. Because they have this awareness in their system, they learn how to listen to their whole body, to their whole nervous system, to their mind, to their thoughts, to their emotions, so they can help themselves. And I do not always have to hold their hand to
Mhm.
solve issues.
Mm. Yes, yes. We want to teach yourselves. Does that is there ever a place where would would I be right in thinking that based on your framework, you would say that you're not one to force practice? And that makes sense with your framework from what I'm hearing from you. But is there a place in within you that believes that consistent um, execution of a particular activity or style of singing or approach to singing garners results?
Ah, okay. So when you say that I don't want to force practice, you mean
Mhm.
that you think that I said that people do not have to practice between sessions. Do you understand it
Sorry,
correct?
I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's kind of what I heard. I thought you said that.
Okay,
If you didn't,
no, then I have to
okay,
reframe that because that's
sure,
not what I want to say.
sure.
However,
Let's do that.
yeah, the way they practice is so much more important than the time.
Right.
So I advocate for deliberate and mindful practice. I have this from Noah Kageyama, great performer coach. What do I mean with deliberate and mindful practice? By the way, you asked me what do we do during the intake session. This is something I explained too in the first lesson.
Okay.
So I invite singers to set a goal for every practice session. For example, this phrase from this chorus, from this song, it sounds totally like I want it to sound, but it's not comfortable. So my goal for today is I am going to train to make this sound in a comfortable way. Or maybe the other way around. It feels really comfortable, but it doesn't sound like I want it to sound. I want a different emotion, different volume, different color, whatever. Or I want to work on my breathing, I want to work on my storytelling, whatever the goal is. Then you decide on a strategy. You're not going to just mindfully go through the song. No, you decide on a strategy. How am I going to approach this? Today I'm going to be using this strategy. Maybe tomorrow you're going to use another strategy that takes us to the same goal, because the more ways into the same goal, the better the brain understands what we're trying to achieve. But today I'm going to work on this strategy. That can be very technical. For example, keeping the smile, showing the teeth to facilitate a more metallic setting or more twang or whatever you want to facilitate then. That might be, I'm going to dig deep into my storytelling, or I'm going to do some nervous system regulation and notice how that has an effect on my singing. It might be a gazillion things, that strategy. During the practice, there's going to be thoughts. There's going to be questions. Write them down, because you're going to forget them. And then
Mhm.
at the end of the practice session, you write down, or you first assess, what did I do? Because it's very possible that you were going to work on the chorus, but you got caught up in having fun with the verse. It's like a nutrition diary. Oh, I'm eating very well. And then you take notes the whole week. You write down what you've been eating, and at the end of the week, you see, okay, I'm not eating well. So it's the same with that.
Yeah,
And
donuts
I
for breakfast
so
isn't good.
no, no, no. So it's a really good check, like, okay,
Mm.
that was my goal. Did I actually do that? Yes or no? And then I suggest people share that with me. No, I offer that option. Many people do not do that, but I offer that option. If they have doubts whether they're practicing in the right way or an efficient way, they can share that with me, and we discuss that together. And people have no way of not doing that, because I start every session with, okay, what has happened since last session? What has presented itself? Or if they have decided to do something totally different than what I've asked them to do, because yes, I give homework, that's also totally fine. And then we have a conversation about why did they do something else. It might have been a very good idea to focus on something else, and then I want to know why, so I can take that in account for the rest of the session. Sometimes, like, okay, you are avoiding here. Avoidance is a very, very big thing in Act 2. When we have anxious convictions, we tend to avoid. We have overt avoidance, we have covert avoidance. Overt is everybody can see it. Covert is, nah, it's a bit hidden. That's the first stage of avoidance. For example, let's go back to that violinist. Covert avoidance would be, oh, I'm not allowed to make mistakes during exams, so I am going to do the exam, but I'm not going to look the judges in the eye, or I'm just going to play very technically and not dive into the storytelling. So I'm doing it, but I'm not really there. That's covert avoidance. And then overt avoidance is I'm postponing my exam. I'm not doing my exam. I'm quitting the conservatory. That would be very overt avoidance. So during practice, many people have avoidance behavior. So that conversation is then also very important. So I guide through them. So their performance anxiety leading to avoidance is not inhibiting them from efficient practice, because the big work happens between the sessions, not during the lesson.
In a magical world where you could request students and uh, you know that you're gonna love teaching the lesson, and two, you know that you're just gonna be uh, perceived as the best teacher and magical teacher in the world, because everything that comes out of your mouth
Life goal.
is what was it
Sorry.
right is what fits now. With that in mind, do you would you is can you articulate what that would look like? Do you have that? Do you have any defaults that if you had the choice, this is what I would go to, because I know this is really my wheelhouse deep down, and these, whether it's a tool, whether it's a methodology, an approach, because you have an array of things that I can see that you pull upon here. Is there anything that really feels good to you personally with your teaching, and it feels like it's more you than other methods?
Oh, can you clarify what you mean with this last sentence when you say it's more you than other methods?
Yes. Well, again, I guess this is one of those things that you can't really explain. An instinct of that where you feel settled. Maybe you have an idea. No, this is going to go well. Oh, you're doing that. Okay, got it.
Oh, yeah.
Anything? Any trends in issues, or trends
Okay. Yes.
yeah, your
Thanks for
approach?
clarifying. My current,
Sure.
no, not current. It's been going on for a few years now, but and I have many. One of my obsessions that has
Hmm.
become one of my very important goals is working with hypermobile singers, because there is a huge lack of understanding on hypermobility. And the most important thing we need to know when we're working with hypermobile people, whether it be in singing, whether it be in dancing, whether it be in athletics, is to know that what works for a non-hypermobile body, for example, a certain yoga exercise, what is very beneficial for a non-hypermobile body can be very damaging for a hypermobile body. Hypermobile bodies react in a very, very different way, and we need to adjust our way of working with their bodies and with their voices, because hypermobility presents, it's not the only thing, but amongst other things, hypermobility presents in the joints. The joints are hyperlax, which means that the joints go further than they're supposed to be going, and our larynx is a big collection of joints. So hypermobile voices can do amazing things. Sometimes they have a huge range and a lot of flexibility. However, they have a lack of control and a lack of stability. And sometimes, because they have this huge range and lack of stability, they end up compensating. So they are very tense and they have a small range and nearly no flexibility, but they're actually still hypermobile. So many voice teachers do not understand hypermobile bodies and voices, and I noticed that there is a big need for understanding. And I am hypermobile myself. Many hypermobile singers, when they end up in my studio and when I explain things to them, like this is why this is happening, they end up saying, you understand my body better than the 50 doctors I went to. Doctors do not understand my body. Trainers do not understand my body. Pilates teachers, yoga teachers, voice teachers, they did not understand my body because it works differently than non-hypermobile bodies. So it's amazing when you notice that you can have a positive impact on people, because it pains my heart that I have to be the person that understands their body better than all these doctors that are not helping them because they're
Mm.
gaslighting them. So it's an amazing thing, and it's a very painful thing to be the person that, understands them and then facilitates them finally singing again, because there are hypermobile people. When you don't just have hypermobility, but for example, when you have hypermobile Ehlers Danlos, there are people who have to quit singing, who have to stop their career, because hypermobility and a high performance career is not always a perfect combination. Many hypermobile singers can have a great career. For example, Billie Eilish has a very hypermobile, a very typical hypermobile voice. And it has been theorized that Maria Callas was hypermobile too. We don't know for sure, but to me, it makes sense. So hypermobile singers can have amazing careers, but they need understanding. Their bodies are not broken. They need understanding.
Oh, fantastic. How do we know Billie Eilish is a hypermobile singer? What are the
Because she
signals?
told that she gave an interview. She's very open
Oh,
about it.
okay. And how would singers at home listening, if they're sat there thinking, is that me?
Okay.
How would they know?
For example, why Billie Eilish is such a typical hypermobile singer? Well, her
Mm.
voice, like these sounds for her, the singing in a way that the back of the vocal folds is not closing and that there's only a little tissue touching each other in the closing phase. That's like very typical. The hypermobile singers have, not always, because hypermobility presents differently in every body and every voice, but oftentimes, hypermobile singers have easy access to whistle voice, um, delicate singing, intimate singing, singing with audible air on the voice. Don't know why I didn't come by. Very easy for them, because the hypermobility presents, among other things, itself in the way the arytenoids work. So oftentimes the arytenoids don't approach as efficiently as they should, so the back of the vocal folds stays open. That glottal chink that presents often in hypermobile voices. The downside to that is that it's often more challenging for them to get efficient vocal fold closure when they want to sing on louder volumes. So going to hey can be a challenge because the larynx doesn't support that. And it's not just about the larynx, it's about the whole body, because we need stability in the body in order to facilitate the voice to do what we want it to do. And this is the one thing that hypermobile bodies often lack, that's stability. It's not just affecting the joints. Here we go again. It's affecting all connective tissues. Our connective tissues are not as tight as they should be. They are not as tightly arranged, so they are not holding us together as they should be. The result of that is that we tend to compensate with our muscles. So we have a lot of tension in our muscles because our muscles are trying desperately to hold us together. So that means that our system creates stability with rigidity. But that's fake stability. True stability is movement. So when you work with a hypermobile singer, movement is your key. That's so, so important because movement creates true stability.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's it really, because it is worth knowing though, right? Because some of those things, I guess, could be outcomes of just, or so, I'm sure there'd be some people that would say, a breathy voice, if that's the guide, could also just be the fact that someone hasn't uh, got the synergy between their vocal tract and their
Well,
airflow. Uh,
if you notice that it's difficult to make the vocal folds approach, what you could do, for example, is ask them to show you their legs. See, normally my knees should stop here. However, what my knees want to do is this. So they are
mhm,
hyperextended. This is just one test. Not everybody who is hypermobile has
mm,
hypermobile knees. It presents differently in every body. For example, I can put my thumb against my lower arm. It's no problem because I have that's not normal to be able to do that. So
yeah.
you could do these are tests from the Baton test. You can find those on my website. So you could do some tests with their
Mm,
joints, and it's possible that people are going to say, "No, I'm so stiff. It's impossible that I'm hypermobile. I'm so stiff." Well, ask them about their childhood. Were they able to do funky tricks like hyperextend their arm and turn their shoulder like that? Because if so, and now they're stiff, it means that their muscles have been compensating for the laxity of their joints. So they're stiff because of the muscles, but it doesn't take away the hypermobility of their joints. Well, another thing, because we were talking about nervous system. Imagine your connective tissues not holding you together as they should. What do you think happens to your sensation of safety?
mm.
Do you have an idea?
I would imagine that you feel increasingly unsafe.
Yes. Our thread bucket threshold is so much lower. So the thread bucket, it's like you have a bucket and everyday stress, not eating well, maybe smoking, drinking, having a fight with your partner, a lot of work, that all fills the bucket. And the threshold where it overflows in a hypermobile person is much, much lower because our brain is constantly scanning for threat. It's constantly thinking, "Whew, I'm unsafe. How can I create safety?" So this tells us that we have a nervous system that really easily shifts to the sympathetic part, to fight or flight. So nervous system regulation becomes extremely important in a hypermobile person. The sensation of safety, telling our body you're safe. So
Mm,
this one is tremendously helpful for hypermobile people because it tells their body, okay, you can breathe. And oftentimes, hypermobile rib cages, because they
mm,
often have slipping ribs, are very tense. So then, instead of stretching, because passive stretching is not good for a hypermobile person, this is oftentimes a more efficient way to assist the rib cage to move more and to open a bit more
mm.
without having to go to passive stretching because that's not helpful for us.
Fascinating. So yeah, there is a correlation between anxiety and hypermobility.
100%.
Mm, wow.
And neurodivergence, a lot of hypermobile people are neurodivergent. And there are
Mm,
more hypermobile people in the artist population. I personally think this is not scientifically proven, at least not that I know of, but I personally think that the reason why there are so many hypermobile people in the artist population is because of our hypersensitivity. Many hypermobile people are HSP, and I think that hypersensitivity is a strength. It's a strength when you're an artist and have that sensitivity and connection to things in a very deeply emotional way. So when you know how to regulate that, when you know how to integrate that while still taking care of your body and your system, wow, that's a huge strength. Many people think that
mhm.
that sensitivity is a downside or is a weakness. Nuh-uh. If you know how to use it and if you know how to take care of it, it's a huge strength.
Just the way in which you look at it. Yes, fantastic. I love the positive thinking. Probably two more questions for you, if you don't mind. One question, because you think at a high level with all this stuff. I can tell your mind's been in it for years. I'd love to. I'd love to position a question to you, probably in a way that I wouldn't do it with most. And that is, it's based on how students, singers, humans that want to make noises with their mouths, can find the person that is optimal for them. I think I think there has to be something in that. I think it's valuable for that to happen. Um, Alignment. I've got a hunch that it would remove wasted time and money for a lot of people if students had a better idea of who potentially could help them more than others. Do you, because you have your intake forms and things like that, have you got a view on the industry as a whole? And if you do think that would be a valuable thing, and then the secondary would be, how is it a possibility? How could that be a possibility that students can be better informed about who they can work with?
I think that we all have to regularly, because that can change, have a very clear image of who is our ideal client and communicate that very clearly on our websites. And
Mhm.
not think that we have to be a teacher that can serve everybody and not take on responsibilities that are not ours. And I think if we all have a clear image of who our ideal client is and also dare to communicate that, not being afraid of repulsing students, is that the English word? I love it
Yes.
when a student, client, singer, however you want to call them, I call them clients. So I love it when a client goes to my website, or a possible client goes to my website, reads everything, and is like, nah, not for me. I love that because they don't waste their time. They don't waste my time. And then they create
Mhm.
space for ideal clients, for people who read on my website, feel that click, make the discovery call. I have to say, it has rarely happened that people have booked a discovery call and not book an intake session in the last years. Before, yes. But I have a feeling that the communication on my website and in that intake form, because it's a questionnaire, but it's also informing them on how I work. I have a feeling that it's on point currently. That it's currently really sending out the message who I am, and that people really already can feel through that what I offer and whether it's a match for them. I can imagine people starting to fill out the questionnaire and then just not making it to the end and hitting send, book my discovery call. And that's great, because if in that
Mhm.
process of filling out the questionnaire they notice, nah, this is not my thing, great, don't waste your time, don't waste my time, go find another teacher.
Mhm. 'Cause there's gonna be a lot more of that where that came from in the actual lessons themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's a fascinating area because I think there's so many things that go into how we represent ourselves as teachers. It's pretty obvious, really. I mean, and one of those is, people have to pay the bills. And so from there, there seems to be how much does survivor bias or survivorship bias come into play there?
Yeah, the
That,
scarcity mindset.
y- yeah, and I'm not, uh, you know, uh, it's good. When is a lesson good enough? When is it? Is it that I'm feeling that they've smiled, they've had a laugh, and they've walked out, and or is it that they've made a breakthrough vocally? All of these things I think are really acceptable things,
Yeah.
right? But but I wonder if, as an industry, we are actually defining those terms or measurements of success as a collective, and if we're not, that may be something that makes it harder for students to find who is right for them. What do you think?
I think the only prerequisite for calling a lesson successful is if the
Mhm.
singer is happy and I'm happy. Because if the singer is happy, but I'm depleted and I end up having
Hmm.
burnouts, because I have to twist and turn myself in all these impossible contortions, is that the English word, in order to make a singer happy, I'm not serving myself. And that's not a good thing. My clients need me to take care of myself in order to be able to keep on helping them. So there are many things that can define whether a lesson is successful. What I have had to learn, and I'm keep on learning because it's difficult, is not to have ambitions for my clients. If only you would practice more, you could be a professional singer. Well, if that's not their goal, who am I to try to force them into a direction that doesn't sit right with them? Or maybe it is their path, but they're not ready yet. Maybe they need more time. It is not my place to define what they need. Who am I to tell them this is your path? No, nobody knows that. That's so arrogant. I'm going to tell you this is what you have to do and this is how you get there. No.
In your lessons, is there ever a time when, and how long do I mean, it's as long as a piece of string, I suppose, but is there ever a moment where you understand, yeah, this isn't working out, even though we've had the intake forms,
Mm.
but I just feel like it invited. I love your perspective, by the way, because that didn't cross my mind before about you, you, even though the singer was happy, how hard did I have to work to make that happen? And that's actually a measurement there to use to whether or not we continue the relationship. But yeah, how long did it take? Is there ever a moment where you sat there thinking, no, we need to, I know we did the forms and I know we're in the room now, but it's still not right. And how do you play that at that moment in time?
Open communication. It's
Hmm.
so important. I actually don't have a hard time telling people that I think they should go to another person because they come to me with a certain goal. If they come to me to buy apples and I only have oranges to sell, how difficult could it be to tell them, well, this colleague is selling apples. I'm selling oranges. Just go there. Enjoy your oranges. It doesn't mean that my apples are bad
Mhm.
quality. I
Sure.
would
There it
like to add something when you say, you just repeated what I said, like what makes a lesson successful if the singer is happy and
mm,
I'm happy. I have to say,
mm,
in my experience, lessons that you leave feeling very frustrated, and that's not a definition of happy, or that you felt like, wow, this was such a big chaos. Oftentimes, those have been such interesting lessons. So they might not be
mm,
happy straight after the lesson, but
sure.
maybe a few days later the penny will drop and then, whoa, yeah, I've learned so much. And when I look back at it or when I look at the recording, actually, that was an amazing lesson. I did so well. Wow, I really hit that note and stuff like that. So I just wanted to add that disclaimer to what is happy.
No, right, because that's required because that's a that needs defining for sure. And I guess it, this is the grey area in all of this that we are talking about here. And I think I love I love the topic and I love the conversation. There is no blueprint, clearly, but I personally believe so much of this exists in trust and transparency and openness, starting with honesty and, as you say, what we do, into the honesty and transparency from the singer, which can often be a tricky thing because sometimes they don't quite know what they
Mhm.
want and or what they're capable of. So there's another grey area right there.
Yeah.
But then when we come together, I just feel that in so many walks of life, that if we could say, I know this is my job, I know that I need to pay the bills, I know that I've got a lot wrapped up in uh, this activity in my life, being a singing teacher, and it's a lot to do with my identity, and I don't want my ego to be disrupted within that. But but these are things I do, and I'm going to try and communicate that the best I can. And if after all of that, can we just have if it doesn't work out, can we have an agreement that, yeah, we at the end of the lesson we just say that was a car crash, or as you said there, maybe we need to give it a few more days to reflect on the session. And then we go from there to see if you do feel there's any value in this. What do you have any more thoughts on that, the transparency and the relationships between students and teachers?
It's possible
Mm-hmm.
that one of us or both of us has a feeling like, oh, I thought this was going to be a match, but it's not. I want people to be 100% convinced that, okay, I have a feeling this could be a match, and then they can buy a punch card. And if they decide to continue with single sessions, great, perfect, no problem. Just continue with single sessions. And you do not have to come every week. Please don't, because in the way I work, people need more time between lessons. The only time when people book lessons every week is, for example, when they're working towards a premiere or record recording or stuff like that. And sometimes it's more than once a week then. But most of the times, people have much more time between the sessions. I am very wary about people spending money and then being sorry about that.
One last question for you, and this is one that I love to ask pretty much everyone. Should singing teachers be able to sing?
How many hours do you have?
A few more, if you need to.
I hate the saying, who can't do teaches, or how do you say it? If you can't do teach, huh? No, I do not agree with that. It depends. Remember the first conversation we had chatting on Messenger? Me filling out your questionnaire, and I was so frustrated that I had to make a choice, because to every question I want to reply, it depends. And I don't think I can say, you cannot sing that note, so you cannot teach somebody else how to sing that note in that particular way. No, it might be that they're great teachers and that they understand how to connect with that system of that singer and how to guide that singer towards that note. But their system does not facilitate that, for example, because their anatomy is different or whatever reason. What does it mean not being able to sing? What is singing well? What is being a good singer? You know, those are such philosophical discussions. So many times people come to me, oh, but I'm not a singer. What's the definition of a singer? When I do la, 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 I'm singing. If you find it beautiful, great. If you don't find it beautiful, also great. But I'm singing. What does good singing mean? If I grunt, if I distort, if I go, I'm begging you for mercy, some people will find that horrible. Now I just woke the cat. Oh, I'm sorry, Salva. Some people will find that horrible. They prefer, I'm begging you. Okay, yeah, but I'm begging, is that horrible singing? I hate these judgments. So, what is singing? What is good singing? What is bad singing? Language is a trap.
You can't leave that like that.
Because words mean different things to every person. When I think of an apple, I see an apple that has a little yellow shade with lots of red. Maybe you saw a crunchy green apple. So words mean different things to different people. That's what I mean with language is a trap.
Mm-hmm. And can cause lots of division and anxiety, frustration.
And this is why I ask so many questions, because when somebody uses a word, oh, I want to sing this in mix. Oh my. What do you mean with mix? So then I ask a gazillion questions. I will not say this is a bad word. I do have opinions on the word mix. I just ask questions. Oh, and I want this sound to be more dark. I have something in my brain that I correlate with dark. maybe they mean something totally different. So then I ask questions. I ask
Right.
them for auditory examples. And many times it turns out that they mean something else than what I thought that they meant. So this is why I ask questions till they're sick of my questions, because I want to be 100% sure that I understand their question as good as possible, because misunderstandings can
Mm-hmm.
always happen. And this is why communication is key. And this is what I do with this questionnaire. And I do have to admit that I do have parts of me that have a lot of anxiety, that are so very afraid that I will not make enough money to get through the month. Those parts are always present. And that's okay that they're there. There are very good reasons why I have this anxiety and this scarcity mindset. Look at this world. And if I look at my past, what I have been through, look at our profession, look at how social media is creating anxiety, this competition. So it's totally normal that these parts are there, but I'm doing my absolute very best to take action coming from the parts that allow me to connect with my values and not from that anxiety. Those are child parts. I'm taking adult decisions that connect me to my values. And those child parts need to be taken care of. It's okay. You can be there. But please don't allow those parts to make decisions in your adult life.
Yeah, this is just excellent. We what a wonderful way to end. Wonderful takeaway for people there to separate those two pathways of thought. Is there anything else though on top of that that you would love to communicate right now with singers or teachers or the industry
Yeah.
that you've just been thinking about for a while?
It's not because I'm preaching all these things that I always manage to do these things. Like in the last thing that I just said, it's not because I try to always make value-based decisions that I never fail. Sometimes I do
Sure.
make decisions and allow the anxiety to make decisions and to lead my actions. But then it's always a very valuable lesson. Oftentimes, when I'm teaching,
Mm.
for example, a nervous system regulation exercise, there's oftentimes a little Sarah here on my shoulder. Sarah, listen to this. You should be doing this exercise too later today. That happens so often. I guess you can relate to that. That resonates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Mm. Well, Sarah, this is just excellent stuff. Thank you for your time today.
Thank
I've
you for the
really
invitation.
enjoyed this chat. I knew it was going to be a good one from the moment we were interacting on Facebook. So thank you so much for your insight, your years of experience and wisdom. And if anybody wants to find you and get in touch with you, where do they do that?
singsing.be. So not singing, but sing. Don't forget the double S / online courses. That's my website.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well, that was Sarah Algoet, someone who's built a business that practices what a lot of teachers only talk about. What stays with me from that conversation is the idea that her intake system isn't just administration, it's a matching tool, a bit like a dating app. The questionnaire, the discovery call, the 2-hour first lesson, all of it is designed so that by the time you get together, you understand whether it's a good fit. And if it's not, she'd rather send you to a colleague than waste your time and hers. Sarah also mentioned something in the conversation that I think every singer and teacher should sit with. It's impossible to be a good voice teacher for every singer. She learned that through burnout, and she built a system so she'd never have to relearn it. If you're curious to know whether or not her approach fits the way you learn, her full profile is at wehelpsingers.com, including her paradigm fingerprint and how to reach her. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another teacher, another paradigm. I look forward to seeing you then.